everyone. Welcome, everyone, to this. I believe this is the 8th presentation in our Spring 2025 Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar. My name is Bradley Flam. I'm the Director of the Office of Sustainability, and we have been very glad to co-sponsor this series of fascinating presentations with the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs and the Sustainability Council's Scholarly and Creative Activities Committee. We're very glad you've joined us today, those of you who are with us in person and those of you who are joining us via Zoom today. We have 4 more presentations this semester. Please join us every Wednesday at this time. And thank you for finding us in SECC 107. We're normally in Sykes 209, and we will return there for next week's and the subsequent presentations this semester. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Nora Ritter.
Yeah, now I don't have it on my screen.
You can see it behind you. Let's see.
Only an issue when I have to point at something. I could use my finger, but that'll work.
Will that work?
Yeah. So thank you all for coming. And I'm here to present on this research, but full disclosure, it really falls somewhere between the realm of research and obsession. So we've been doing it. The interns and I have been doing this for about 2.5 years now, and really a totally unexpected development. And one thing that's definitely true, nobody ever did tell me there'd be otters. We working here? Uh-oh.
Not going.
Nah.
Right. So further proof that Cali is indispensable.
Yep. Yeah, I'll let you figure that out. So I don't know if you can see there was an otter in that image. I'll point it out if you can't see it. Working over here.
Working. We've got it. I think so. Let's give it a try. That not working?
Not yet.
There it is.
Hey, yeah, so one of the many unexpected results or occurrences from this research was the presence of North American river otters in the Gordon. So we got a subtitle, Species, Patterns, and Insights from 2+ years of wildlife camera monitoring in the Gordon. So what I'll be addressing, the motivation behind doing this work, how we structured it, and what do we find. So pretty simple. If you don't know the Gordon, it's on South Campus. It's 126 acres, primarily forested, but there's a nice matrix of wetlands and meadows as well. And it's got a great deal of edge, and much of that edge is adjacent to developed areas. So there's this ability for many of the larger mammals to get subsidized by people's garbage, essentially, and pets. So here's the Gordon football stadium here, Tide Road, Stadium Road, and you can see a very large amount of edge. So what motivated this work? Really wasn't, I have to tell you, I really had no idea this was in my future, my intern's future, but it's something we fell into. And it was driven in part, at least initially, by 2 species, coyote and white-tailed deer. And then as we went through the process, we started to really focus on a lot of different species. And we were hoping to get good videos of fox kits, which a week from now I should have. So why coyotes? There was a doctoral candidate from Temple University, Peyton Phillips, and back in 2019, she was investigating how mammals contributed to the spread of tick-borne diseases. And the Gordon was one of her study sites. She had, I believe, about a dozen west of Philadelphia in Philadelphia. And she had cameras set up in the Gordon for about a 6-month period. I think on the order of like 2 to 3 cameras, maybe 6 different locations. And one of the outcomes of her work was these 2 new mammal species. One of them, coyote, Canis latrans. And we suspected there was coyotes in the Gordon just because of finding deer carcasses and the way they were killed and the way the carcasses were spread about. It really seemed like there had to be coyotes. Another thing, perhaps not as significant, but really interesting, was southern flying squirrels were noted for the first time. And I'd always wondered why there weren't flying squirrels in the Gordon. And the answer is there were. We just didn't see them. Then there was a second Temple grad student, Anna Carlson, and she was looking at mammalian, the diet of mammalian predators and looking at rural to urban gradients. She used a lot of the same study sites as Peyton Phillips, and she was focusing primarily on domestic cat, red fox, coyote, and for about a 6-month period in 2022, she had cameras out at 3 sites. And she photographed coyotes at all of them. And that coyote, what it's chewing on, that's a scent lure. So they use these attractants to get coyotes to come to the cameras. Other species, white-tailed deer. So huge issue for the Gordon from overgrazing, and there's just a significant impact. Full disclosure, this is actually a video from the Gordon that I turned into a GIF, so it's not standing there eating repeatedly. So as deer are grazing, typically they're gonna preferentially graze on native rather than non-native vegetation. And it results in trees and shrubs regeneration gets really reduced. If you walk around the Gordon, you can see a really far distance, and in a forest that isn't overgrazed, you would be able to see maybe a fourth of that distance. And so forest succession gets altered, and there's also impacts on extirpation of herbaceous species, soil compaction, impacts on fungal mycorrhizae and soil invertebrates. So it's an issue. And there was some knowledge about white-tailed deer in the Gordon. So in 2008, there was a white-tailed deer survey. These 3 feed stations were established, and then wildlife camera photos were analyzed, and it was estimated from that work that there was 80 white-tailed deer in the Gordon, or roughly 20 times the number, 10 to 20 times the number of what should be there to, and have the forest still stand a chance to regenerate more or less naturally. One conflicting or one confounding part of this work was that one of the 3 feed stations was outside the Gordon. So the Gordon is this unshaded area, these 5 areas. And then there's these 3 disjunct forest blocks or blocklets. And My predecessor wanted to incorporate, was hoping to get that incorporated into the Gordon, and I've been fervently hoping not to incorporate that into the Gordon. But in any event, one of the three feed stations was there, and all this deer are going to move both through natural lands and into suburban lands, into residential properties. So they probably deer that we're eating here were probably coming from here. So it's a bit confounded. In any event, we know there's too many deer. So we wanted to see if we could get some sense of where deer were, if there were any uh, hot pockets of herbivory, and we'll see if we established any of that. So I'm going to talk about structure of our research. So what type of research was it? What was the camera array like? How do we identify species? And then the huge endless black hole of data and data management. So research type, going here from Petchy et al., three different types of studies: design study, typically what would you would think of as a scientific study. So, everything's controlled, lots of variables that are well known and correlated with other variables. And then there's field experiments, and included under that would be clinical trials. And so not nearly as controlled, but still selected variables that are correlated with other variables, or known to be correlated. We don't have to worry about any of that, because what we're doing is exploratory research. And one doesn't necessarily know what one is looking for. Older I get, I can completely relate to that. And only a few or none of the variables are from experimental manipulations. And in our case, none of them are. And the only really the only variable would be habitat type. So I'll talk about this in a minute, but we situated the cameras in different habitat types, and we can make some comparisons between them. And the big thing is you can't make any causation, any statements about causation. So you can't say, I had a camera here that was 20 feet from the road and I saw more wombats. I mean, you can guess that maybe people are throwing their wombats out and they're getting over towards your camera, but there's no way to really prove anything. Camera arrangement, big question. How many camera locations were there? That was easy, 55. So,
Wow.
yeah. And so here's the Gordon. We've seen it. Here's the 55 locations. We named each one. We didn't establish them sequentially. So we go from cattail, what says cattail is really cattail trail 2 to 6 to 5 to 3, the 7's in there somewhere, 4, etc. So there's no real order that way. But the big thing to note is at any one time, we had a maximum of 15 cameras up. So this is this is current. So the yellow circles are active cameras. The pink ones, locations that currently don't have a camera. So at the moment, we have 8. That, and they were all set to be triggered by motion detection rather than on a timer. So if something moved in front of them, including vegetation in the wind and rain and snow, they were triggered. So site selection, we wanted to really create a broad distribution across the Gordon. I think we did a pretty good job of that. And we wanted to sample from a range of habitats. We did that. Some are clearly underrepresented, but 55 was enough. And so we broke the habitats down, and this actually began, this categorization began maybe a year and a half into the project. And then as I thought about it, we put more cameras up in areas that weren't well represented. But got forest edge, forest interior, upland meadow, which is really dry meadow, wet meadow, riparian or stream side, and then a single site we had to call Bamboo Grove because even though it was 30 feet away from riparian and would normally qualify, is in a bamboo grove, and it just seemed so different than anything else. The biggest criteria when selecting a site was that the area looked promising. So there might be a lot of animal tracks. Some cases we saw like foxes crossing an area, and we set up cameras there. Species identification became a real ordeal. One thing to note, we changed the SD cards semi-weekly, and by that it could be 2 days or it could be 5 weeks, but we tried to do it weekly. And the files from one camera's event, between changing, that went into a single folder. So I'm going to be talking about folders moving forward, and that's what that is. That we took all the image files out of the camera at one point in time, put them in a folder. That is the only real unit that we have. So initially we were just IDing those organisms that we could see. And then after a while, we realized we could use the Merlin app and fall down another rabbit hole and start doing bird ID by sound. And we made sure that Merlin identified the same bird multiple times, unless it was something really common. So blue jay, American robin, we trusted Merlin, but things would come up and that we hadn't seen or that were rare or unexpected. We made the app repeat that ID. And then there was a few species that, despite our lack of birding skills, that we could frequently pick up on that Merlin didn't. So Merlin seemed to be particularly bad with mourning doves and crows. So there were various other identification issues. There were a lot of issues. So we had misidentifications, that's on our end, and then complete unknowns, unidentified mammals, unidentified birds. Misidentifications. So as expected, we got better over time and over a long time. And every now and then we would go back and look at a folder of images or videos for one reason or another, and we would find things that we misidentified. So here's an early one. Creature will be coming through here. You see it running across. And I did this folder. I called it a large and energetic red fox. And then a couple years later, I was looking at this folder again. That was clearly a coyote. And there was also a white-tailed deer right here that ran off as soon as the coyote got close. But that I have no idea how many of those are out there, but we still run into them. And it was energetic. I will give it that. Complete unknowns. Sometimes, sometimes it was a camera issue, too far away, too dark, too obscured by vegetation. This happened, we saw this one just last week. And here's my first thought. And I didn't realize how close that was going to be. But then
Perched on our identification, so.
that's got to be it. That's a new
Yeah.
species for the Gordon. So I went back one video, 21 seconds earlier. So that was an easy one. They're not always that easy. Here's another one that's been bothering me for years. So complete unknowns, you find them in 33 folders. There's this point 688 folders of imagery. So about 1 in every 20's got a complete unknown. There's one, that white one. This is also a GIF, so I can't slow it down. But time and night, I would have expected a bat, but it's not flying like any of the other things we've called a bat. Flying squirrel riding a bat? I have no idea. This one bugs me. It still does. Unidentified mammals. So we were able to get beyond unknown or below unknown. And about 10% of the folders then are going to have unidentified mammals. Various reasons, standing too close to the camera, only the eyes were visible, foggy weather, and or condensation on the lens. So here's I'd say too close. I'm guessing raccoon, but I have no idea. Only the eyes, so we'll see them right there. And that's actually on the other side of the stream. There's a small wetland, there's a stream, there's this animal. I would have said white-tailed deer until right now, when I would say fox or coyote. But in any event, unknown. Foggy weather. Going to be coming up right there as soon as I start it.
That's a wombat.
Yeah, it does look like a wombat. Probably a raccoon, but just not certain enough. So we looked at 1 million of these. Oh, and I should have said this really dark background for the PowerPoint, that was because we look at so many nighttime videos, and I saw that theme as like that looks appropriate. Unidentified bird. So a huge issue. About a third of the folders, and each folder could have, I don't know. Alden, do you want to say what's the most?
I mean, one time I was in a folder, like 10 different species.
Yeah.
Wow.
The birds just don't want to be identified. And we've gotten identification help from Dr. Josh Auld, Dr. Jenny Euling, Alden Ritchie in the back. So that's helped immensely, but it's still, there's just so many that are never going to be ID'd. There we go. It's going to remain an infernal mystery. All right. Data and data management. As of a couple of days ago, about 64,000 videos, 52,000 images, a couple terabytes of storage space. So the big deal is at any one point, only a portion is going to be identified or is going to have been reviewed. So with the videos, we're about 2/3, a little more than I guess 3/4 done reviewing them. Images, It's like about 90. Oh yeah, we got percentages. Look at that. 93.3%. That's how that looks. So, yeah, it's a folder. Number of images, videos in a folder is really variable. It could be 10, it could be 1,000. And when it's 1,000, it's typically because there's been a lot of false triggers, specifically vegetation moving in the wind. So this is a simulation of me and the interns. Now we have to crunch that data, those data. I think it's me, probably. So we got 688 folders of reviewable imagery. And the way we did this, we watched everything at a certain point, began listening to everything, and we compiled the data in text files. And early on, they were pretty basic. It's got my name, a date, species list. And then we started becoming more focused, more invested in this, and we started recording each species, at least one file name that showed that species, and then notes. And then it got, more and more complex. We added a section called redacted birds. That's for when Merlin identified something and then wouldn't identify it again. So we wanted to just keep track of that. So if it said there was, I don't know, Darwin's eagle, which I hope isn't a species, but if there were, that we would keep track there. And then if in the future we suddenly started to see that species or hear it, then we could go back and we would know where to look to see if that had been a correct ID. But typically, if it was something unexpected, we would run 5 playthroughs, a minimum of 5 to 8, and see if it got identified again. Then once we were done with folders, we would take the text file, paste them into the database. So the file itself went there, the species list got copied again into this other field. We had a little bit of control in there to if there was something not yet recognized or perhaps typo, the field would turn pink. So here we've got something called a winged migration, and the database doesn't know what that is. So protection against spelling errors or other types of errors or something new. And then after all that, magic starts to happen. So here's our list. We got American crow, goldfinch, red squirrel. Let's find the mammals. Red squirrel, red fox, raccoon, white-tailed deer must be in there somewhere. No, that's really unusual. And so what happens is the database will now parse this and, whoop, get back here. Why aren't you doing that? Man, it's not very magical. So, meant to be a movie happening here, but a video, but essentially it parses it. So golden crown kinglet must be in our text file somewhere. Golden crown kinglet. So it now starts to give us an account, a way to track what's in each folder, a way to visually see what's in each folder spatially. So here's our map again. You remember this? There we go. This one's working. So American bullfrog, just in a single location. And say up top, it's just one location. My favorite, one of my favorites, American mink, 4 cameras. So we can see that it's really spread just along these riparian sites. American robin, 32 cameras. So it gave us a way to look for patterns and to keep track of where things were being seen and where some of the hot spots were. And then one other thing we can do with this is by clicking on one of these labels, we get a site list for that particular location. This one, the legendary West Slope one. So we're hoping to find out some more. Oh, that was just a review of, or just a reminder of how we started out. So we were interested in coyotes, white-tailed deer, and some of the other large modal animals. It didn't include Fox Kid videos in this one because I'm disappointed. So how many species? And what was noteworthy? And how did this measure up against what we already knew? And then what patterns were we able to discern? So species, in 2.5 years, 89 species, and that would be in 3 groups, birds, mammals, and reptiles, amphibians, reptiles. 18 species of mammals, 4 of which were new for the Gordon. 66 species of birds, just 1 new one, and only 5 species of reptiles, 1 kind of new, and I'll explain that later. So here's our 3 groups. And you can see mammals did a particularly good job of showing up on camera. So about 4/5 that are known for the Gordon have been seen on camera, including those 4 new ones: coyote, feral cat, North American river otter, southern flying squirrel, and here's our otter. I was so excited and so unexpected. And then this was 4 days later, same locality. Swimming over to a deep pool where herons and owls do a lot of fishing. Apparently otters and minks. So white-tailed deer, there are other species that ended up, not unexpectedly, being the most commonly encountered. So it had the highest number of locations. So got 55 cameras. Where did we see white-tailed deer? It's going to start up there. It's going to speed up. Deer in a lot of places. So everywhere. All 55 locations, and typically we'd put a camera out, and within that first week, almost always there was at least 1 deer, and frequently on the first day. So 55 locations. The next nearest were red fox, eastern gray squirrel. I didn't really think of this. So predator and prey, and then blue jay. So mammals well represented at the upper end, and then you have to come over quite a ways to see the next mammal, coyotes. This is the topmost 20 encountered species by number of folders. Or sorry, number of locations. White-tailed deer, also the highest number of folders, so 610. Nothing else even remotely close. Raccoon and eastern gray squirrel still in the top 4, but they've switched position. Then a bunch of birds, and then surprisingly, American red squirrel. I had no idea till I summarized the data. So what does the deer situation look like on the ground? So 9 deer in 9 seconds. There's a lot of deer. Some areas clearly not as common, and no real discernible pattern though that I could tell as to what makes one area preferential. So coyotes, amazingly noted in about a third of the locations, and really kind of spread out. I mean, there's some here, one site here, bunch here, and then this whole coyote desert right there where they just didn't show up. We did some of the coyotes we could identify visually, you know, say it was the same one or the same pair. And let's see, we saw one pair, Northlands one, and then 1 week later, the same pair went down to Wonderland one. Wonderland being named because it's downhill from this trail that it's kind of the limit of where we would go. And we say, I wonder what's down there. And so we put 2 cameras there. So this is coyote on camera. We're not going to have 9 of them though. So pair of coyotes, really just magnificent animals, and so exciting to see them. They do have an effect on deer. So this next video is pretty graphic, and kind of shocking and very lucky, but we had this pair of coyotes killing this poor deer on camera. So we very much want there to be fewer deer. It's really sad to see it happen. And one thing we've noticed, and again, remember, this research doesn't allow me to make causative statements, but since that time, looks like the deer have been adopting some form of camouflage. Not consistent. 2 other mammals to talk about. Anybody want to guess what they are? One of them is in this room. So we got domestic dog and then humans. So domestic dog, this just a recent development. I realized, you know, we always wrote down whether there was dog walkers and hikers and everything. We never really tracked the data. So set things up to where we could track it. So 34 cameras where we've seen dogs, and some surprising ones where we haven't seen dogs, but they are throughout the Gordon. They're frequently off leash. So here, this one's a little hard to see, but there's a dog right there running down the trail, and there is a deer reacting to that dog. And then this is a fox den. Fox den is right under that dog. So, because if you're a dog, the first thing you do when paying a call is do some scent marking. And then wait till your friend comes. This is a fox den where they've got kits. Last year they had kits, and there was before we ever got to see them, they, and I think it was in part because of too much dog activity. And so we're hoping, I really do think this week or next is when the kids should come above ground, and hoping, we've been keeping the camera changing crew away from there, myself included, so we'll see. And then Homo sapiens, humans. And there's two categories here. One is interactions with the camera, and then interactions or appearance on camera. So with the camera, small amount of theft. That camera where we saw the otter, that next week, that camera got stolen. So we don't know. Could have been thousands of otters parading up Plum Run. We have no idea. Some vandalism. Some of it, I mean, I hate to profile, but adolescent males, and just some of it was just goofy, like, hey, I'm gonna throw a rock at that camera, and the kid throws a rock, breaks the camera, and so the screen doesn't go blank. You can see this kid's face. He's just so shocked that he actually hit it. It's just, and then I don't know whether to report this to ICE, but we've got an active filmed eco-terrorism. And luckily, we can't see the people's faces, so I get to show this.
Why do you do this?
They have it like locked to the trees. Otters. Beware.
So one of the co-conspirators just put a handful of mud and moss over actually didn't cover the lens, they covered the sensor. No, they covered the lens, but they didn't cover the sensor, so there was 500 videos that showed up after that. We have no idea what they were. So a little bit of eco-terrorism. We've stood strong though. We're fighting it. So remember, here we are, rigorously reviewing all this. And one of the unexpected benefits of this was many cases watching people was like as interesting as watching other life forms. And much of this I can't show you, but there was a lot of recreation. There was social media content creation. So one of the cameras recorded a young woman recording herself for TikTok or Instagram, whatever. It was really obvious. And so we had secondary social media content creation. And we had some celebrities unexpectedly show up. I don't know if anybody knows the 1980s movie RoboCop, but I swear this guy came by one of our cameras. You be the judge. Our reaction. So moving on to birds. Surprisingly, almost half of the numerous species, the 136 species that are known for the Gordon, showed up on camera. Observed is in quotes because there's two different ways to observe them. So there's our little breakdown. So 59 of those 66 species were visually seen, and then 7 were only noted by call. But again, when I summarized these data, I was shocked that we had actually seen 59. And, you know, probably 3/4 of those species were only noted by call, like 99% of the time. And then there was one where they showed up. Single bird species new for the GNA, but it happened early on in the project, one of the things that fueled this obsession. Looks a bit like Nessie, but not quite. Yeah, so Wild Turkey decided to stand in front of this camera and then fly across. Same camera where we saw the otter and all sorts of other things. And just going to touch on a few other birds of note. They're all big. Great blue heron, barred owl, great horned owl. And great blue heron just showed up in a surprising number of locations and surprising number of videos. And so all the locations were either streamside or wet meadow. And the reason this is surprising is because we rarely see them. I mean, I think the birding group sees them more than we do working there, but they really were spread pretty well. And so based on number of folders, it was the 10th most common species. I never would have expected it. So it was in 174 of those 688 folders. And it was featured in a number of interesting videos. So green herons are known for fishing using lures, but this is a blue heron. So what the green herons do, they pick something up, they drop it so it floats on the water, and then the fish or whatever they're waiting for, will come up, think it's an insect or whatever, and come up and get eaten. So we saw this blue heron doing the same thing. It's got a little leaf, it's going to drop it. It's got a little, I don't even know what that is, but long and skinny. Barred owl, only a 10th of the cameras, only seen in wetland habitats, not as quite as broadly spread as the heron, and in many interesting videos. This next one, that is a great blue heron, but there will be a barred owl showing up. Keep your eyes right there. So a late night territorial battle. And this actually went on for another 1 or 2 more videos, but I figured that was enough. Great horned owl, something we've seen periodically, but and it was only noted at 3 locations, but the dispersal across the Gordon was broader than what we'd run into on the ground. And so again, this is the same site that had the otter and the heron and the turkey. But what's interesting about this is a big bird, and in its feet, it's standing on a fish. And it's going to move it up slope for us. So that it moved it up next to that bench enough where I could go measure the height of the bench and then compare it to the length of the fish. And the fish is somewhere on the order of 18 to 20 inches long. And if you've seen Plum Run, you wouldn't expect there to be things bigger than like 5 inches. So we're not sure of the species. We think it might be a white chub, but in any event, that was another unexpected event. So just 5 herptiles, and it's not unexpected because they're small and, there's not that many that are going to trigger the camera. And there's lots of unidentified ones. And each of the 5 that we could identify was just known from a single location. And this one was particularly noteworthy. It was new in that someone had told me their dog had seen 2 of these, had scared up 2 of them. So we got a white-tailed deer, And then right here is our herp tile. And we almost missed this reviewing the videos, but luckily someone better than me was reviewing them. So the deer is left. And here it comes. So it's a snapping turtle, common snapping turtle. Probably I don't know, 16, 18 inches long, very decent sized. And so it was nice to get that confirmation. I believe the guy when he told me he'd seen it, but there'd been a number of herptile surveys. We've been out there a lot. I've been out there a lot and never seen one. So it was nice to get that confirmation. Here's another poor herptile. So in the jaws of that heron, we have a bullfrog that gave its life just to help out this presentation. So I think that was the first bullfrog noted in the Gordon in about 8 years, something like that, maybe 12 years. It's been a long time. And now the last, good point. So we're in the final section here. What patterns did we find? I better move a little quickly. But so a lot of variation among habitat types. So this is just a number of locations. Riparian with 19, the best represented. Interior forest 17. And then here's number of species. So riparian, huge number of species relative to the others. And interior forest, upland meadow, wet meadow, all comparable, really forest edge. Bamboo grove with an N of 1 is quite a bit lower, but we have no idea what that means. So looking at some box plots, here we go. So upland meadow N of 3 and bamboo grove N of 1. You can't really I can't say legally make a box plot, rationally make a box plot because there's not enough to have 4 quartiles. But big thing here to note is that in the riparian, which had that huge number of species, the mean value, this line right here, is lower than 2 of the other habitat types, comparable to one of the others. And that was driven by these 3 outliers: Cattail Trail 3 with 60 species, Plum Run Bamboo with roughly 60, and Gordon Run Mid-Stretch with about 50. And then, very much outliers. Some temporal variability. So here's the first video ever taken at this location, other than us setting up the camera. Coyote. 2 coyotes. We were so excited. 45 days later, no more coyotes. So single coyote video. Don't know what happened. It wasn't a great site for anything else either. Temporal variability. So this is wood duck, and this is back in 2023. Pair of males calling for females. And so in this 3-week period, 2 years ago, there was the species was seen 5 different days. There was on the order of about a dozen videos from 1 to 7 individuals. And that was the last time we saw them on camera. But for some reason, there was this period where they were very much there. So we got a female, 3 males, another female, and I think there'll be another male or 2 showing up. And then one thing this is both spatial and habitat variability. So Plum Run Bamboo 2 has 58 species, so the second richest location. And in the same general area, there's, and I mean really close, 6 other camera locations. 3 are riparian, 1 interior forest, 1 wet meadow, and 1, I didn't list it, bamboo grove. So here's Plum Run Bamboo 2, and really this site and this site are much closer than I just wanted to leave a little space so they were differentiable. So Plum Run Bamboo 2's got 58 species. Those other 6 sites combined had a total of 31 species. And if you look at just the riparian ones, just 17 species. And so there was some difference in the time that those cameras were in place. Plum Run Bamboo was up for 601 days. The other 6 together, just 235 days. So I thought, what happens if we look at Plum Run Bamboo for just 235 days? So I came close, 237, because folders didn't cooperate exactly. So it's still, 3 times the number of species found in those 6 other sites. So I have no reason, I can't explain this variability, but very significant. And then number of species were only noted a single time. So 11%, most or half of which were birds, half of which were reptiles, were only noted once. And then another 7 species were only noted twice. And these were all birds. So 1/5 of those 89 species were only noted either once or twice. I have no idea what that means. Finally, in summary, big recommendation, just pray for luck. So make all your camera locations be in the same place that equivalent to Plum Run Bamboo 2. I mean, it really, so much of it was completely random. That Plum Run Bamboo 2 wasn't a site that I selected. The one directly upstream where we saw a fox crossing, I selected that. It didn't, after 40 days, we had white-tailed deer and unidentified bird, the only 2 species. So I told an intern, go 200 feet upstream, find a good looking spot. And she went 50 feet downstream, found a spot that didn't look good to me at all. And it turned out to be amazing. So I guess that should be point 2, is don't listen to me. Point 3, this whole project was completely unexpected and became an obsession. So if necessary, get professional help. I'm really happy with what we found, but it's been a tremendous amount of effort and for a tremendous return, but really nothing that was ever on my calendar. So quick acknowledgements. We've seen these guys before. Well, we didn't see Peyton. So Peyton Phillips, people from Stroud Water Research Center. I ran some herptile IDs by them. We've got the 3 bird people. And then we have the dozen or so interns who help process all this. They're listed alphabetically. Mackenzie Rose, the last one on the list, she wanted me to say that. And that's it. Sorry, I went wrong.
Well, we normally stop around 10 till, because some people have to run to a class. If you have to, please feel free. It doesn't look like another class is trying to get in here right now. So Nora, if you can stay for some questions and answers, and you can stay, let's take a little time. And questions can come either from our audience online or here in person.
John.
Great talk, sir. Very interesting finding. You mentioned the Merlin program, which I understand identifies birds based on their calls and songs. do you think that since you have these recordings, you might also somehow expand it to other animals? Maybe different types of frogs, like maybe the wood frog I didn't see on your list, or birds and different things like that.
Yeah, quick word about the wood frog.
Could you quickly repeat the question, because I
Oh.
don't think folks on do with the first.
Yeah, so the question was, we used Merlin, and that app, you can only identify birds, but there are ways to identify other biotic groups by call. So some mammals and also herptiles. And John pointed out that wood frog hadn't showed up on our list. And so I'm sure we have visual evidence of numerous wood frogs, but they always fell under the category undetermined frog because it was always under nighttime conditions and you couldn't make out the coloration. It really become, they and a lot of other animals like fox markings became either impossible to see or just, very hidden at night. So there were wood frogs, I'm sure, but we just couldn't call them that. And then, we've looked into, there's a device called a puck. If Alden hadn't left, I'd ask him to say what that means, but that has got the ability to do mammals at least. And the big problem at this point is we've got 60,000, I've already forgotten the number, 60, 70,000 videos. So where would you start? So I would start areas where we've seen unidentified frogs or herptiles and mammals, but it would be someone would have to want that knowledge more than I wanted at this point. But it's a good plan.
You heard of the trail cam project for Gorgongosa National Park in Mozambique?
No.
They've got a lot of cameras up and they crowdsource the identification, so you can go online and join the global group of volunteers that are doing that. But your intern's covering Gordon pretty well. Or you have a big backlog.
You saw that one slide. We're about 20% of the videos yet to be reviewed. And there was an undergrad doing a capstone project and initially featuring wildlife cameras in the Gordon, and he was going to crowdsource his IDs, but then he changed his project, left us with about 10,000 videos. Nah. 4,000. Yes.
From doing this research.
Otters. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the otters were shocking. Some of it has to do with animal interactions. Like, I've been very much anti-deer since I started. But just watching these deer like take care of their young, and also just the ways they interact when they're moving through an area. Some of what appears to be educational, like there'll be multiple does and a few like yearlings, and it doesn't seem like all the does are the parents of these, the mothers of these yearlings, but they all seem to participate at times in education.
Is there really a plan to do a controlled hunt within the Gordon? So I know they did that over in Home Valley Village Park.
Yeah, in fact, we've talked about this some, and there's a company that does that professionally, and it would be about 85% of my annual budget, but I got an email the other week, just last week, from a group of sportsmen that are doing this. And apparently they're now doing it at Swarthmore and a couple other areas. One of them, I think.
Too, salt preserve there.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna reach out to them once I run that by the Gordon Natural Area Advisory Council. And it was a good letter, but it's clearly cut and pasted and they forgot to change one name to Robert B. Gordon Natural Area.
You mean to say that they would pay you to go there and hunt?
No, they would initiate a program and,
Could you, the 85% of your budget? What do you mean by that?
oh, that's what it would cost me to have this professional company come in. Yeah.
Cause I know at my house, sometimes hunters are like. They want to come there and offer to like. Do the driveway and I see there was this little perch at some kind of a distant past where they would like shoot bones and arrows at deers and things, but where someone which.
Yeah, no, and it's from the literature, it's not. It takes a real effort and a specific setup to be effective. And you know, being a university campus and given the amount of recreational use we've seen on camera, you know, it would take some real thought and care to make sure that the only animal getting shot or on the end of an arrow was white-tailed deer. Yeah. Right. And that was part of our, you know, we set things up to where it needed multiple confirmations and yeah, because you know, using the app you would get these ghost IDs that would show up once and you know, if it was something rare or unexpected, we really drilled down and, you know, made it confirm it, you know, X number of times. But then there'd be, you know, common species that would still only show up once. And I don't know, yeah, I've seen that in my backyard as well using the app.
Yeah,
But
there's weird things that happen. My Merlin app said I had a black-capped chickadee in my yard, marked it as rare, which they are in our area because they're farther north, but they do come down here. But then when I was listening to what I heard, whenever it said black-capped chickadee, it actually sounded like a white-throated sparrow that hadn't quite got the song down. And so I
yeah, so we
dismissed it.
we did use as much caution as we could, but yeah, it's definitely there's got to be some that are. I mean, just as with our visual identifications, there's got to be some.
And also Merlin told
Correct.
me there was a scissor-tail kite in my yard too.
Nice.
Yeah, it was cool. Probably blue jay.
Nor, you and your interns have done a lot of species identification of things that don't really lend themselves to a trail cam. Insects and fungi and slime molds and lichen. How has the introduction of this tool for species identification compared to the way you still do and you have done species identification for biotic groups that are beyond mammals, birds and herpets?
I mean, we've seen lots of insects on camera, particularly at nighttime, but we've never been able to identify anything beyond, you know, like lepidopterans, so butterfly or moth, or odonata, so damselfly or dragonfly. But you know, we've used on the ground ID to follow up on some of what we've seen on camera. So there was one location where a deer repeatedly coming back and eating bracket fungi off this log, and so it wasn't clear to me what that was, and so we went out and ID'd it, and it wasn't anything that was commonly meant to be browsed by deer, but so that was interesting.
What about, crickets and katydids? Like, you can pick up, there are identification guides, but nothing like Merlin.
Yeah, and
You have to learn it.
you know, and the audio quality is very uneven. So which video was it? Man, one of the ones from Cattail 3. Unfortunately, there was about 5 of them. But camera at that location would always have suppressed audio for the first half of the video, and then suddenly the audio would bloom up. And then a lot of the locations were near a lot of noise, you know, like road noise and whatever. And so it's just not a great source, you know. It's not quite as good as I would like it to be.
We're at 1:15, so I think we're going to have to end right now, but please, let's thank Dr. Ritter.
Yeah, my apologies for going over.
Oh, no,
That's Brad's fault.
record, like,
Thank you.